one thing that we noticed with the mushrooms when you take these high doses is that at high doses you can hear this interior sound that inside your head, and it's hard to characterize. It's kind of like an electrical buzzing sound. You heard it on DMT, right?
I was not expecting this,
right?
Because I didn't know. I had no conception of what to expect when I was doing this. My only expectation was what the closest I've been to this on edible marijuana, right? Which is not even in the same universe.
Right.
And as soon as I started to effectively, as soon as my soul left my body, I don't know how else to put it, I had this pulsing wow, 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 like very vivid auditory sensation.
That's it. Some people describe it as like crackling cellophane or something like that. On DMT, you get this. Well, on mushrooms at high doses, not so much at lower doses, but at high doses, you hear this thing. And not only can you hear it, but if you can sing it. You can try to imitate it with your voice. You can make this meow, 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 meow sound. And at a certain point, your voice will lock onto this thing. And so then you're not trying to imitate it. It just pours out of you. And it's a very powerful sound. I mean, it's like the kind of sound that can, shatter glass, that kind of thing. And we experienced this with the mushrooms and also with DMT, but we experienced that you could make this sound and it just seemed to have a certain resonance that actually, had this effect. And so we thought, well, what is this? The mushroom, and the mushroom is saying, well, what this is it's a frequency that can activate the DNA in your neural system and actually create a standing waveform of your DNA. To create, I mean, I'm skipping details here, but the basic idea was that if you project this sound at a mushroom in the right circumstances, you can actually activate the DMT, the DNA in yourself and the mushroom and create an external standing waveform that you can actually see. So it is an artifact that you're making out of your body and your mind and your brain and your DMT, your DNA and the mushroom. And this thing in religious traditions is if there's any analogy to it, it's effectively the resurrection body. We wanted to create this artifact. You would both see it and be it at the same time. It would be something external to you that you would observe. We envisioned that it would be, a purplish, violet, glowing disc, basically. But it would be telepathic, and it would obey your telepathic commands, and it would be the ultimate object. It would be, in fact, what Terence has since called the transcendental object at the end of time, and we thought that this was how you could create this thing. Well, 50 years from now, downstream from all that, I understand we were just nuts, I mean, because obviously it didn't happen. I mean, we tried to create this thing. And the prediction was that once we created it, it would propagate through basically space-time and would collapse the space-time matrix. And it would end history and, we'd all move into the singularity, pretty much instantaneously. Talk about messianic inflation. This was messianic inflation on steroids. the mushroom was downloading all this stuff, like the blueprints how to do this. To me, it was like, and I was writing furiously, this is the procedure, what we must do. We must take mushrooms. We must include ayahuasca in there because there needs to be harmine in this mix, because harmine is the resonator. Harmine actually, in ayahuasca, it's the MAO inhibitor that activates DMT, but in this particular instantiation, it was the intercalator. Harmine intercalates into DNA, and this is known. This is scientific fact. It intercalates into DNA, so harmine became the resonator, the antenna, effectively, that could set up this standing waveform, and the instructions were downloaded, and it was like, this is what you have to do. You have to sing to the mushroom in this way, in this very, very controlled situation, and you will create this artifact. I don't normally cop to this, I mean, yeah, you're looking at me like, gee, should I call somebody? Hold on. I mean, I'm sane. I'm totally.
No, this isn't the craziest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
At the time, so we did this, right? And I performed this experiment, and the prediction was that this was going to happen. Well, obviously, it couldn't happen. It would violate every law of physics known, if this had happened. But
now, would this thing hypothetically only appear when you're under the influence of psilocybin mushrooms or DMT, or would this actually appear when you're not under the influence?
Our supposition was that once it was there, it would be there.
Okay,
and it would be something that would be controlled by thought, and it would have access to all information, and it would have access to all. Effectively throughout the cosmos, it would be a standing waveform, like an electron in some ways. The electron doesn't have a boundary. Its boundary is space-time itself. This would be like that, but there would be a physical part of it that we could that would be
the time machine.
An everything machine. A time machine, a UFO machine, the transcendental object at the end of time, the ultimate technology, that would be made from our brains, our nervous system, our thought, and that of the mushroom. And that, this would be it. That didn't happen. That couldn't happen. We did the experiment, and at first we were doing this in the dark, in the hut, and there's a light, on the mushroom in front of it, and after I'd made the third scream, you probably read about this, right, in the book. Mm-hmm. After I'd made the third, then the light from my ruana, my serape, fell on the mushroom and exactly bisected it. And I was looking at it, and I looked at Terence and I said, this is our world. This is what we're looking at. And it did. We had this idea that this was all being controlled by, dome-headed beings from 22,000 miles out in orbit that they were directing the whole thing, And I said, this is our world. And so what happened was, because what we'd projected couldn't possibly happen, but what happened was that I basically detached from reality, for about 2 weeks. And Terence detached from reality also, but in a different way. It was like in a complementary way. This was about taking a template, kind of a reverse negative image of each other's DNA, because we were brothers, right? And it was opposite. It's very hard to articulate. It was hard to articulate it even then. But even more so now because I'm so distant from it. At the time, it made perfect sense. It made perfect sense to Terence and me that this had happened. And at the end of this experiment, we thought, we have succeeded. We succeeded, but the timing of the appearance of this stone, we thought of it as a stone, as in philosopher's stone. Mm-hmm. The timing for the appearance of this artifact, basically we were correct. We were incorrect about when it was going to manifest. It wasn't going to, it didn't manifest immediately. So the question is, well, when? When is it going to show up? And our companions who were there, who hadn't participated in this experiment, were like appalled, totally appalled. It's like,
it was
we
just
need to get these people airlifted out of there and into a psychiatric facility as soon as possible, But it wasn't possible, and
sorry, go ahead.
It's good that it wasn't possible, right? Because that would have aborted what was happening, and that would have. I have no doubt that if that had happened, that would have left me, at least, insane, probably for the rest of my life, lost in this delusional place. I don't know what it would have done to Terence, but the fact that we could not end it gave it all a possibility, the opportunity to play out. And what played out over about the next 10 days or so was that Terence, became adrift in the cosmos. I was basically, my mind felt that I felt, well, there wasn't really an I anymore, but this entity that I transformed myself into felt like I was, my circumference was identical with the circumference of the universe. You've heard about being one with the cosmos. Well, man, I was one with the cosmos. I was the cosmos. But over the next 10 days or so, I began to condense. Each 24 hours, I started falling back together. And each 24 hours, I was a little more condensed. Like it started with the circumference of the cosmos. The next, it was the galactic cluster. The next, it was the galaxy. The next, the solar system. The next, Earth. The next, and each one, I was sort of coming back into my body and into my mind, and Terence simultaneously. So I was 3 sheets to the wind. I couldn't look after myself.
10 days, you said this was.
I forget the exact time frame.
Roughly 10 days.
About 10 to 14 days.
And did you have any relationship to physical reality back on Earth, or was like, how did you get through the day?
Well, people had to look after me, and because I was joined to everybody, like my companion, for example. If I wanted to smoke a cigarette, I would ask Sarah to smoke a cigarette, and I could enjoy the cigarette that she was smoking. Or if I want, because I was connected to everybody, and
wow.
Or if I needed to take a shit, I could ask somebody else to do it, and they would do it, and that would, in my mind, of course, not in reality, but in my mind, and. So I was really divorced from what we would call reality. My brother